Hey guys, it's Mama J, and I have had a great time reading all of your comments this week, and you have asked some really great questions that I look forward to answering for you. But first of all, I want to say if you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you and let you know that this is a channel where I will discuss all kinds of things related to reptiles, amphibians, and betta fish, and just share the passion of that. One thing that I have really enjoyed with you all in your comments is just getting to know each of you a little bit better. I love that about the reptile and fish community, that we've just been able to share different things and encourage one another as we're learning in this journey together to try to make the very best homes for our animals. Okay, trusted computer here, and let's get started on these questions. Now, I got a similar question from Kathryn Donner and Kelly Marie, and both of you guys asked me, did I have any pets when I was a child or lived at home with my parents? And the answer is yes, most definitely. I'll tell you a funny story here. When I was a really small child, I must not have been but about a year and a half old, I think my mom may have brought home a cat, and I must have really loved the cat because apparently I tried to put it in my mouth, and so needless to say, the cat didn't stay very long at our house. But growing up, I had several different kinds of dogs. I had a couple of poodles, and I did have a black and white Shih Tzu that I really loved. And I think I did have a stray collie for a little while before my parents made me give it away. But I've always grown up loving animals, and we would catch tree frogs and salamanders. And one thing that was just really fun, probably one of my favorite childhood memories, is my dad raised box turtles growing up, eastern box turtles. And we actually had a little fence in our backyard, and we had about 12 of them at one time. And it was really unique because people from all over the city would bring us turtles. We would stop along the side of the road sometimes on the way to church or something and see a stranded turtle, and we'd get it and put it in the car and bring it home with us. And that was just a really fun memory for me. And my dad, this must be where I get all my love for reptiles, and he was great about record keeping. I remember we got my mom's little Weight Watcher scale out, and we would weigh the turtles and measure them, and wrote down all kinds of fun statistics about them. And amazingly enough, the turtles would hibernate and stay with us just year after year. And that was really a fun thing for us growing up. Okay, I'm getting comfortable in my chair here now. V Beta asked, what was I like as a child? Perfect, I'm sure. I'm sure my parents would say that. I probably would say I was your classic tomboy. I enjoyed playing outside, climbing trees, making mud pies. I would ride my bike around with some of the other kids in the area, and always had a lot of fun doing that. Now sometimes my cousins and I, we would get to go down to my grandma's house, and she had a little creek that ran behind her house, and we would go out there and we would catch crawdads and salamanders. So that's pretty much some of my favorite things I did growing up. But also really loved sports. I did gymnastics for just a little while, and I danced for a number of years, and played a little basketball, a little tennis. But that's pretty much it. Okay, this next question was, what is my favorite animal? Oh gosh, that's kind of hard. Well, if it's one that I currently have, I guess I would have to say probably my bearded dragon is one of my all-time favorite animals. As far as fish, I would have to say my betta fish Chance that I had was most definitely my most special betta. Valerie also asked me, what character trait do I most admire in people? Wow, that's a really good question. I think one of the things that I admire the most in people is people that have a positive attitude. people that are kind and hardworking. And also, I would say probably the most important thing that I really admire is people that just have a heart for the Lord. And for me, my faith is very important to me, and I hope that those are characteristics that I can develop in myself as well. But those are certainly things that I really admire in other people. So, great question. Okay, Owen Tice, you posted a comment. I would like to see a video on steprunner lizards and their care. And yes, absolutely. In fact, actually, that's one that I had written down on my schedule that I would really like to do in the next couple of weeks. One thing I noticed when I was trying to do research just myself for my own steprunner lizard is I looked at YouTube and Reptile Magazine articles and lots of different places, and there's just not a lot of information out there about these steprunner lizards, but they are great pets to have. And I by no means have all the answers, but I would love to be able to share with you guys just little care tips that I've learned and little quirks about the species. That's really a fun thing. So definitely one that I hope to do in the future. Now, Owen, you also asked me what was my first reptile. Well, as a child, probably a box turtle, but as an adult, my first reptile was my leopard gecko, Sophie. Do I plan on getting more snakes? Yes. Shh, don't tell my family, they'll probably freak out. I've actually researched several different species and have thought quite seriously about a corn snake. I think they come in just amazing paint jobs, and everything that I've done and read about them, I really think that that would be a snake that I would really enjoy having. I have also researched on garter snakes, and also love western hognose snakes. So we'll see. Not anything I'm doing immediately, but definitely something that I'm keeping in the back of my mind I would like to have in the future. Kelly Marie asked, what do you think is the most difficult reptile or fish? Well, out of my animals, I really wouldn't say anything is difficult per se. As far as time consuming, I probably would say my bearded dragon is probably the most time consuming. Now, it was a little bit difficult for me at first just to figure out the lighting and get the basking temperatures and everything just right. But once I had that set up, it was really not a big deal. Now, their cages can get a little bit messier than some of my other reptiles, and so they require a little bit more daily maintenance. And of course, you're fixing salads and need to have a variety of insects. And in my case, I do baths several times a week. So time-wise, yes, I'd say that they take a little more care. But then again, they're also my favorite type of reptile. So I don't really see them as being difficult whatsoever. As far as fish, I think goldfish that I've taken care of probably took a little bit more care because they're sort of a messier fish. But overall, I guess I've just enjoyed all the animals that I've had. But great question. Okay, Melly Winters, how much do you spend on average for food per month, and what do you get, and what do you recommend as far as breeding your own instead? Oh gee, I hate to add that up. I would make a guess that probably on average I spend about $50 a month on feeders and insects and things of that nature. It kind of depends though. For the fish, obviously, I have things like pellet food, frozen food on hand, and you buy that and then it lasts for a really long time. For the reptiles, obviously, I'm having to replenish feeders on a more regular basis, and we'll usually try to buy, 3 dozen crickets at a time. I do have a dubia roach colony, and I do definitely recommend if you have bearded dragons or things that like the dubia roaches, trying to do a colony on your own, it's really not difficult, and it really will save you money in the long run. One of the drawbacks to a roach colony is it does take a little bit of time to kind of get it started. And in my case, I've got quite a number of breeders now, and it's producing quite well, but I have several animals that are sort of eating out of my bin, so it's probably not producing quite as fast as they're eating at the moment. So normally I will order about $30 of roaches, maybe about every 6 weeks, just to sort of replenish my small feeders a little bit. And occasionally I'll order hornworms, and I try to keep things like waxworms or superworms, mealworms, things like that on hands, because those are staples for me. I've heard a lot of people that have kind of had success breeding their own superworms and mealworms. I'm just now kind of starting that a little bit with the superworms, so I'll let you know how that goes. But hopefully that kind of gives you an idea. But yeah, a lot. Pet Craz asked, what got me into betta fish? Well, actually my grandson did. As I was telling you earlier, I kind of grew up with tropical fish. We had a fish tank with lots of community fish. In college I had goldfish. And when I got married and started having kids of my own, I kind of stopped taking care of fish for a while, and because we had our dog, cat, you know, hamsters, guinea pigs, the whole menagerie of animals at the house when the kids were little. But by the time my grandson came along, we were out shopping one day at Walmart, and we went to see the fish, and he got all excited, and I thought, well, you know, I've not had a fish in a really long time. That might be something that would be a really fun pet for him to have. You know, when he came to the house, he could kind of help take care of it, and would be a really good experience for him. So we ended up getting one of these little feeder goldfish, which, you know, was a terrible idea, because the fish up and bellied up, you know, within 2 days. But I thought, oh no, you know, this fish has died, and my grandson's going to be upset. So my daughter and I went out to the local aquarium store, and we ended up picking out a betta fish. And I'd never had a betta fish before. In fact, I really had not even seen or interacted with a betta fish before. And so we brought home this little fish, and my grandson loved it, and he named it Leonardo. And you know, when he would go home, and I would go and I would look at this fish, and I thought, that is the most peculiar fish I think I have ever seen. Of course, you know, all I had ever known was like, you know, tetrafish and angelfish and catfish and goldfish, and betta fish have a totally different personality than any of those type of fish. And you know, it had the little upturned mouth and pouty face, and you know, she would go through the water, and she would do this like little zoom and stop and zoom and stop, and then, you know, the fins get flared out. And I thought, I've got to learn more about these fish. These are really fascinating. And the more that I started reading, I just fell in love with the species of fish. I just thought, I can't believe that there are so many different fin types and colorations, and just the genetic combinations of things was just fascinating to me. And so, you know, one fish turned into 2 fish, which turned into 12 fish, which, you know, at one point I lost my mind, and I think I had up to like 38 tanks. It's just really crazy. But anyway, needless to say, I really, really, really love betta fish, and they've been a great passion of my life the last few years, and have worked very hard to encourage good care of them, and just to educate people of they aren't fish that can be in a little small tank, that they really need to have a larger tank, and, you know, plants and heaters and filters and all the things. And to see these fish thrive, it's just absolutely amazing. So Hope that answers your question. Anastasia asked me, do you plan on getting more betta fish? Well, I'm always open to more betta fish, as you well know, but I have to say I have downsized my collection quite a bit, and the reason being is that since my reptile hobby has increased, I'm spending more time caring for each of the reptiles. And one thing that I decided to do was, as my fish kind of aged out and passed away, that I would not replace those fish as I had been doing in the past. And I kind of joked with you guys about that I did care for a number of tanks before and have for several years. And I do want you to understand that I have put so much time and effort and care into making those habitats just the absolute best that I can. All of my tanks have been filtered, heated, they've been planted tanks, and I've done lots of research on betta fish and really take the care of them quite seriously. And I'm very adamant about my water changes as well. But I have to say, it is a big responsibility, and to care for a lot of fish for a lot of years, that's a lot of water changes. And so for me, I felt like since the reptiles were taking more time, that I would just kind of focus on and do the very best that I could of the fish that I had. And so currently I just have about 7 betta fish, and I'm kind of happy with that number. I might kind of round that up to 8 because I have a spot in the room right now that I really would love to have another tank in, but it kind of depends if I see the right fish. Certainly if you know, I feel like I run across a rescue situation that I feel like that I can contribute to and be a benefit to in that fish's life, and I have a special connection, then absolutely I would love to have another betta fish. And certainly I'll probably have more in the future, but I think I'm going to keep my numbers down a little bit lower at this point. Now, Raymond, you asked me, had I ever taken a trip with a reptile? And if so, did I have any tips on heating or any factors like that? Actually, the only time that I have really traveled with a reptile is when we brought our bearded dragon home. And we actually got him in another city, so we drove about 2 hours back to our house. And at that point, I just had, it was warm, it was kind of in the late spring, early summer, and so I just had towels and held him and, you know, kept him warm that way. But as far as taking a long trip, no, I've really not done that. As far as going to the vet, I've put my bearded dragon like in a cat carrier, and that has worked great. That keeps him contained, and usually I'll put blankets and stuff in there to kind of help keep him warm. I know some people have used heat packs and things, like a heating pad, maybe on low or something while they were in the car, and that's worked well for the reptile. I have taken my snake to the vet, and of course have taken him in a container, tried to keep the car temperature, you know, as warm as I could, and keep him within the substrate just to keep him secure. But no, I would love to do that at some point. So let me know what you find out. And I saw that you were making a trip to Tennessee, and that's great. Tennessee is a great place, and love to hear where you're coming to visit. So thank you guys so much for sharing your questions with me. I've had so much fun this week just reading each of your comments, and I really love interacting with each one of you. Maybe you're watching this video and you think, oh, I've got a question I'd really like to ask. Feel free to leave me a comment. I would be happy to answer your questions in the comments below. And thank you guys so much. Again, I just can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate your support and watching the channel. So I hope you all have a blessed week, and I will see you next time.